everyone. So a long time ago, just a little bit after the Muppet Show left the air, I was a kid and I decided I wanted to learn how to program computers. So I started building a few games, I started making a few small applications. And as I was doing this and learning how to program kind of on my own, I came up with one simple rule that it's really helped me throughout my entire programming career. And that is, computers are dumb. They're really dumb. They don't know what to do. You've got to tell them what to do, and then they execute exactly what you say, and then you have to tell them precisely what to do next. And the other thing that computers are really bad at is interacting with humans, which is sad because that's actually what we usually want to use computers for. So, when you want a computer to interact with a human, you end up having to tell it exactly what to say in your program. And then when you want the human to respond, you have to narrow the options so that your program's going to know what it's going to say. And then you still have to do a lot of work to get the input and capture it in the right way. So the computer can interact with humans, but it's kind of like a puppet. You're just there's always a programmer behind it that's kind of manipulating it and making it do that interaction. A few years later, I guess about 10 years ago, maybe not quite that much, these conversational UIs came out. There's Alexa and Siri and Google Home. And so now computers are actually pretty good at interacting with humans. You could speak to them, and they could speak back. But if you've ever programmed a conversational UI, you know that what's actually going on is it understands your words, and you get all the words, but you still have to put in all the sentence structures, basically all the different ways that they might say the thing you want. You have to put in all the synonyms they might say. You have to anticipate everything. And of course, when it responds, it's still your program responding exactly what you want it to. So it's still that puppet that's in the background. You still have to program it. The programmer's still manipulating it in the same way. So this year, things changed. So now that puppet, it's talking on its own. There's no programmer there. It's just a bunch of numbers, and so it's talking back and it's interacting with humans really well, and it's not entirely dumb. And as a programmer, I find this amazing and exciting and a little terrifying. And it's definitely going to change the way we think about writing software entirely. But that's not all. When you think about it, think about all the communication that goes on in your business. Think about, how much of that communication is mediated by computers. We got Slack, we've got email, this presentation is done on a computer. Programming, that's a form of communication. So, almost all our communication is mediated by a computer some way. And now think about what percentage of your business processes are actually that, or rely on that form of communication. It's probably all of them. And so when you think about how all those processes now with generative AI can be improved, made more efficient, or and augmented with generative AI, then you can start to get an idea of the transformation that we're facing over the next few years, the scale of it. So I think we all should be amazed and excited and a little terrified. So I'm Alex Cruikshank. I'm going to talk to you today about generative AI and organizational resilience. I am a product engineer at West Monroe, and for the last year I've been working with the AI Lab. And so the AI Lab, we spend a lot of time working with our clients to figure out solutions for them to use generative AI and how to do that. We also spend a lot of time figuring out how to build solutions for ourselves and how to make our own work at West Monroe more efficient. But West Monroe, we're a consultancy, and we work with a lot of private equity firms. So those private equity firms have a lot of portfolio companies, and we end up talking to those portfolio companies, their CEOs, their CIOs, their CFOs, about what the future looks like with generative AI, what they're doing, how they're coming up with their solutions, and how they're trying to stay resilient with this transformation that we all know is going to happen. And so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what we talk about in those meetings. Okay, first I'm going to talk about the threat. And by threat, I mean the transformation. So I'm going to put the stat up here. So up to 3.3% annual increase in global productivity due to generative AI. That's across the entire economy. This is what analysts and economists are predicting. And there's a lot of stats that I could put up here to kind of get the scale of the thing. They're all made up. This number's made up too, but it's not crazy. And the reason why it's not crazy is because if you look at the 2000s, you'll see that economists believe that a number roughly like this is what the productivity that was gained by the internet, by all the startups and all the web companies coming into play. So, so basically, when you think about this number, this is like a small financial crisis and a dip in the housing market, and gas prices rising. Like, you can have all those things and still have a good economy. If this productivity comes to pass because of generative AI, it's a really, really good thing for the economy. But it's all coming from transformation in our business processes. It's all coming from efficiency. That's all this can be. So at the end of the day, this is this is a mountain of change that we're looking at. This is another analysis like this is from McKinsey, and they were looking at job automation. And sorry, this slide is a little hard to read, but basically they're dividing jobs by education levels. At the bottom, you have no high school degree. At the top, you have master's or PhD. And they're talking about how much automation there's going to be with or without generative AI. So the dark blue at the bottom, that's without generative AI, and the light blue at the top, that's with generative AI. So you can see that there's going to be a lot of automation no matter what. But with generative AI, suddenly it's a great equalizer. Like, suddenly all the jobs are going to get automated, and and definitely generative AI is taking is more automating those higher skilled jobs, the ones that require more education. So as we think about automation, some of the jobs we were not really worried about a couple years ago are now looking a little shaky. And also, I want to talk about the character of this transformation. There is a lot of, basically, you can't expect generative AI to just like hit one department within the enterprise. The generative AI, it's going to affect all the communication within the enterprise. There's opportunities, any place there's communication, there's going to be opportunities to make it more efficient with generative AI, which means you're going to have lots of small initiatives across the entire enterprise. So no one's exempt, and it's going to be transformation by 1,000 cuts. And of course, every industry is going to be a little different. We've been talking with manufacturing companies, retail, finance, insurance, healthcare. All these companies, they all have different challenges. They all have different things they want to solve with generative AI right now. But they also have a lot of things that are the same too. The entertainment industry right now is in the news for AI. They definitely have a lot of big challenges with AI. Pretty interesting. But I want to talk about software just because I think a lot of us are in software. It's definitely close to my heart. And it also is where potentially the changes in AI could happen a little bit sooner. Okay, so at West Monroe, we did our own study using GitHub Copilot. To see how much it would improve our developers' performance. And it turns out developers were getting a 22% gain in productivity. If you talk to Microsoft or GitHub, they're going to say 50%, but they're a little biased. So we're going to stick with the 22% number, but still, that's a huge gain in productivity. That's like buy 4 developers, get 1 free. If you think about the front-end development, generative AI is really good at talking to people. Computers are now really good at interacting with people. A lot of the work that we do when we build our front ends is to make that communication possible between humans and computers. We're spending a lot of time building UI. And there's a question of just, do we need to do as much of that now that we have AI? It's not entirely clear, but it seems likely that we're not, some of those, we just don't need as much of that work, and that work is going to have to go elsewhere. Same with design. I think we're not seeing a lot of great solutions for doing UX design right now, but we see a lot of people trying to make things happen. And design has really been automated for a long time. We've been, with design systems and component libraries, it's a lot easier to build a really good-looking, good working site that, without a designer. But it's not hard to imagine in a year or so that it's going to, like a generative AI is going to be able to put together all that kit of parts and build a really great experience without much effort, just by explaining what you want. Okay, now I want to talk about the timeline a little bit. And before I do, I want to start with this quote, because this is my favorite quote of all time. This is a William Gibson quote. "The future is already here, it's just unevenly distributed." And what this is talking about is, any future that you can imagine, any technology future that you can imagine, it's probably true that the technology for it already exists somewhere. It just hasn't spread out because we don't know how to use it well, the market conditions aren't right, or maybe people are just reluctant. So I like to think about this quote every time I get impatient for a future, that has flying cars and pet robots, and then I just think, well, those things actually do exist. They're just really, really expensive and kind of scary right now. So no crystal ball for how the transition is going to play out, how long it's going to take, but we can look at the past and get an idea from the way the internet grew. When you think about e-commerce and streaming and social media, like these things are like just part of our lives now. They've really changed the way we live our lives, and so that transformation has happened. We've been completely altered by that technology, but it didn't happen overnight. It took a long time. The technology existed many, many years ago for the kinds of things we had, for the most part. But it took a while for people to get used to it, for people to figure out how to make it spread. And so we envision kind of the same thing for AI. In fact, we can just kind of take some of those curves and apply it to AI. We know things are underway right now. Like I was talking about earlier with GitHub Copilot, code generation is a thing that we can use right now and delivers productivity, and it's kind of production ready. ChatGPT obviously is out there, and so people are using that to automate in the office, plus all these products are coming out that have AI added to them. But we're now looking at how do we automate support, and how do we do knowledge management better? And products are coming out for that. There's projects that we're working on with our clients around that. So that stuff's all happening, and all these things are going to have their own adoption curve, and they're all going to take a while before they really become transformative. But overall, generative AI is going to it's going to be the product of all those smaller transformations. So the thing is, I don't think there's going to be much of a transformation this year, even though there's so much hype. Everyone is just still figuring things out, and everyone, just here and there, people are starting to get a little disillusioned. So the hype curve is working, but it's taking time. So really, 2 to 3 years. Probably before we see some real transformation in industries. And then, 10 years from now, maybe we're going to look back at this time pre-generative AI, and it's going to seem like a strange place, but, that's speculation. All right, and so now the point of this talk, how do we stay resilient in the face of all this change that probably is going to happen, especially when we don't really know what it looks like exactly. So always, when you want to stay resilient, you want to be flexible. And I think with generative AI right now, it's a balancing act. You can't just say no. You can't resist it. You can't ignore it because eventually your competitors are going to overwhelm you. Your employees may leave. But you also, we're talking about your business processes that are probably working right now, and we can't just go through and upend and change all the business process to be AI optimized because we don't know that they're going to work after we do that. So we need to have a balance. We need to be gradual, and like I said, I think we have time. So here's the first idea. We should let people automate their own jobs. People know what their job is. They know what they need to do. They know the tedious parts of it and what needs to be automated. So, and the thing is, generative AI is the most democratic technology, at least since the spreadsheet. So it's not hard to use. You just talk to it and it talks back. So it's possible for everyone to start automating. So the only thing is, to do that, you have to let people actually use AI. So this is, maybe for some of you, this is obvious that you use generative AI at work on work information, but it's, most companies are struggling with this idea. And for good reason. It's like you can't just ship sensitive information to OpenAI without breaking compliance rules, or at least your security rules within the company. So you have to find ways around that. Unfortunately, there's a lot of good options right now. There's Amazon just partnered with Anthropic, which means all 3 of the major cloud platforms now have a generative AI solution associated with them. And what that means is if you are storing your sensitive private data on the cloud, there's no real reason why you shouldn't be able to use AI in that same cloud with that sensitive information. It's going into the same place and coming back from the same place, so it should be okay. So this is a really positive development as far as I'm concerned. I was actually talking about this very subject to a bunch of CFOs a couple weeks ago, and I said this, and there was a chief security officer that almost knocked me off the stage, came to the computer and said, whoa, we gotta take this careful, we gotta be slow. These hackers are using generative AI to do phishing attempts. And I was like, are you worried that your employees are gonna start hacking your company and that they're gonna use your corporate account to do it? So there's a lot of fear out there. There's a lot of distrust. A lot of it's rational and a lot of it's not. So just kind of just keep that in mind and just try to be sane about it. And hopefully we can all get using AI a lot quicker. All right. So another idea: build AI literacy within the company. Like I said, generative AI it's democratic, it's very easy to use, but just because it's easy to use doesn't mean everyone's good at it right when they start. So there's a lot of things that you actually get better at as you start to use it. There's figuring out what kinds of tasks are good with AI and what aren't. Figuring out how to word your prompts so you get better results, and most importantly, how do you keep it from hallucinating? These are all things that you learn the more you work on it, work with it. So if you give people access to it, they're going to figure it out. But if you can provide training, not only are they going to get there faster, but you can also start to signal that it is okay to use it at work, and maybe even encourage to use it at work. Okay, this is a big one for me. You should collect and share your prompts. And so you can do it in a wiki, you can do it in your content management system. At West Monroe, we built an application that allows people to use our sanctioned AI and also store prompts next to it and use those prompts. But even if you're just putting in a shared spreadsheet, that's still great. You might want to consider having a role, like a prompt librarian, to kind of curate those and highlight the ones that are working well and maybe tweak some prompts so that they work a little bit better. But obviously, if you're sharing prompts, you are saving people time. They don't have to write the prompts themselves. You're also helping to build AI literacy because people can look at other people's prompts and see how they're doing things and figure out how to do it better. But this is the thing I really love about it. when people are submitting their prompts, what they're really doing is documenting these obscure business processes that you may not know about and that these people really want automated. And so that's just another way to build a little bit of resiliency. And the other thing, that survey that we did, developers gained a lot of productivity, but the one thing that we really saw was 100% of the developers loved it. They all said that they enjoyed working with it. A lot of them said they would never go back to not working with it. So giving developers Copilot or some other coding assistant is not just a productivity tool, it's also going to help you with retention and morale. All right, so those were like some basic, organic, let's just let the AI in and kind of build our tolerance to it, get ready for transformations in the future. But we're all in different places in our AI journey, and sometimes we want to lean in a little bit. Sometimes we need to have cost savings or somehow take more advantage of generative AI. So we are working with a lot of clients that are doing that right now, and we are running into a lot of problems. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about how to avoid some of those. Okay, so the main thing I want everyone to understand is that you can't understand a person's job by understanding their job description. Every person brings a lot more value to their job than you would think. And they bring it in little ways. People are constantly working around problems. They're constantly sharing how they worked around those problems. They're innovating. They're also bringing empathy to their job. And these are all things that AI is just not capable of doing right now. So the AI can often do the job description, but often the job description is not enough to do the job, and you really need a human to do that. An example of this, I was working on a chatbot a little while ago. It was for an insurance company that was, it was to give coverage advice. And so for esoteric reasons, when I was testing it, I had to enter in, I think I'm pregnant. I'm not, by the way. But so anyway, I type in, I think I'm pregnant, and it would always respond, congratulations, you're covered for blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know this is a congratulations moment. So I went in and tweaked the prompt a little bit, and I said, I think I'm pregnant. And it said, oh, I'm sorry to hear that, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, ooh, that's worse. So, and trying to explain that context, you can't to an AI. It's like that subtle social situation is probably just a little bit beyond it. So you got to be careful about those little things. So this is the approach that we would like people to take to automating jobs. The first thing you want to do, and we want to take a product approach, first thing you do is you want to learn from your workers that are there, not what you think the workers are doing, but what are the workers actually doing. And then when you build, you don't want to automate, you want to augment. And the nice thing is anything you build to augment is going to be on the path to automation. So you build tools, give those tools to people, let them use those tools, learn about how well it's going, and then learn how to build efficiency with those tools. As you're building efficiency, it may be that you grow and don't need to hire, or maybe people leave or whatever, and maybe you just end up with all the productivity gains you're looking for without ever needing to fully automate. And you still have a human in the loop, which is nice. But maybe you do still need to automate, and then you just need to take that next step and go ahead and finish it by learning what you need to do that. All right, and just one more thing. One more creepy slide. So I want to talk a little bit about the uncanny valley. This is, so the concept of the uncanny valley is, it's from animation and robotics, and it's the idea that if you have a kind of humanoid character, as it gets more and more human-like, close to human, it gets more and more relatable up to a point, and then as it gets close to a human but not quite believable, suddenly it reverses and it becomes really creepy, like these mannequins. A similar thing happens with AI. If you use a chatbot, if you say to like someone that they're going to be talking to an AI, a lot of times they're just going to refuse. They want to talk to a human. If you don't tell them and put them in an experience that looks like they're talking to a human, and they will quickly just determine that they're not talking to a human, and then they're going to get angry. And these are kind of the uncanny valley effects that we have to watch out for. And if they get angry, that's really bad. That can damage your brand. It's definitely going to create a bad customer experience, so you just don't want to do that. So when you're thinking about using generative AI to interact with customers, you might want to think about how to, I should have said, the solution to the uncanny valley is you just want to stay out of the valley. You don't ever want to get to humans. You want to pull back a little bit, make things a little bit cartoony. And you can do the same thing with a chatbot. One of the easy things you can do is have it stop using I as its pronoun and start having it use we. So it's the voice of the company that's talking. You're not trying to suggest this is a human or an individual that's talking. But some other things you can do is, just don't make it look like a chat. Just make it look a little bit more like a search and have it return results, and maybe they're summarized and processed in the way that a chatbot would. But then also have another prompt that would allow you to expand on your search. And it ends up being effectively the same thing as a chat, but it doesn't look like a chat. It's a kind of cartoony version of chat. And ideally, it keeps people from being as creeped out. Wow, gotten through this really quick. So conclusions. Generative AI is going to change everything. It's going to take years, though. We should prepare by making sure all our employees are AI literate. And when we automate our jobs, we should make sure that we are thinking about the human element and really taking care when we do that. And that's it.
My question was, because I've been thinking about this a lot, and two things I'd love you to talk about. One is the different testing skills we're going to need to be able to understand, right? That whole thing, is it creepy, is it, so on and so forth. And then the other one was, my observation is that one thing you didn't say, which I wish you had, but maybe you'll add it to your talk track now, is the approachability of this technology. So, a year ago, maybe, you had to be like the data scientist told, But today, it's really approachable. So, I think change is going to accelerate. And I think, I think it's, I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit, that would be awesome.
All right, so first thing is testing. I agree. Testing is really hard with generative AI. It's it's non-deterministic. It can say different things every time. It's hard to evaluate what's a good answer versus not. It's pretty subjective. I actually have written a tool to kind of test bench different responses from chatbots to so at least a human can compare them over time. And so you make a subtle change to a tweet to a prompt, it allows you to evaluate it and judge it, and then maybe you can run all the responses again and see if it works on all of those. But it's not easy. I think it's only going to really be solved by having another AI evaluate the responses. And I don't think we're really there yet. I mean, with the tools, they don't exist, but I know they're coming really quickly. As far as the approachability, I totally agree. I think it is the most approachable technology I've seen in a long time. It's interesting because I think it's really not the technologists that are leading right now. It's like everyone has dove into generative AI, to ChatGPT, and they're figuring out how to use it. And I think all the programmers and and product people are just trying to catch up and figure out how they can kind of take advantage of it too.
Any other questions? Thank you. Thanks for a great talk. So you talked about automation, and I was just curious if you have thoughts about dealing with our workforce, asking or even talking about automation makes people feel like that's my job, what will I do next? So in the context of resilience, in organizations, what are your thoughts about what we do with that freed up, overhead? And then maybe related, you said that early on in your talk, you said, this is exciting, but also freaks us out. I think I've said the same thing, but, is it for those reasons, or do you have other reasons for that feeling?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, what to do with that overhead, I think is a big problem, and I think that's why, it's one of the reasons why I'm saying we should be a little scared. We should be figuring this out, and people should be, I think one of the things is building that AI literacy is essentially allowing people to retool a little bit, and maybe some of these jobs are going to go away, but they're going to be able to find new, maybe AI-assisted jobs that are going to be, better and also, more valuable. And I think the thing is, people are going to want that. People are not going to want to do the jobs that are going to get automated away. If the fact that they can be automated means they're kind of tedious in the first place. So, hopefully people are looking at that. But I do think that not everyone's going to, take the steps that they need to stay ahead of it. And there is going to be automation that's going to happen. One way or another, you don't get those productivity gains without people getting essentially automated out of jobs. We know that when that happens, people end up at other jobs. Like overall, it's a good thing for everyone. Everyone kind of gets a little richer, but it does cause a lot of stress when people lose their jobs. And so I think everyone should be trying to prepare for that. And sorry, the second question?
Generally, the sort of, we should be a bit afraid, or should be aware, I guess it's sort of,
Yeah.
what is the threat.
Yeah, and that's, I think that is why we should be a little afraid. I don't think we should be afraid of the AI. That's not, I'm not one of those people that think AI is going to take over the world or anything. It's just like when you work with it, you realize that it doesn't have that sense of agency right now. So it's, maybe something else happens in the future and it's going to be scary, but it's not scary now. When I say it's frightening, it's just frightening because it just never seemed like this would happen, that we'd have this kind of, like, that computers would be capable of doing this thing. And it just, it's a little creepy because, yeah, this thing that seemed inanimate before is now animate. And it's also a little creepy because, it's going to disrupt a lot of lives. It's going to disrupt a lot of businesses. And change is always scary, but it's not necessarily bad, it's just scary.
We have one more question right there.
Sort of a tangential question. Do you ever recommend comparing different GenAI tools like R and Anthropic, and what do you recommend? I heard about Anthropic that they use a constitutional AI algorithm, so they have Apple's terms and conditions as part of the the core of the engine that they're building. So if you are asked a question what is from ethics from using GenAI, like that?
So is the question, what's the difference between these different models, or, sorry?
Not really comparison, but if you have to build something or recommend something so that the GenAI models don't exceed the limits of ethics and not have sarcastic language, profanity in their responses, terms and conditions, copyrights, things like that. What is the best way to do it?
Oh, yeah, so you're talking about guardrails, and it's nice that, Anthropic, they put a lot of fine-tuning into it to make sure that it will not do that. I haven't actually tried it to know how well it does with that. I will say the best way to avoid the AI doing offensive things is just, try to stay out of the realm of where things can be offensive. Don't ask it to be funny. That will almost always be offensive. Just, ask it to respond to a question as succinctly as it can. And generally, I think all the big platforms do well with that. I certainly haven't seen any problems, but, if you're worried about it, I mean, you could certainly put like a standard profanity filter on the end, and you could even use that as a guard to make sure that, and like have it try to regenerate the response. I don't think profanity is the issue. I don't think that's ever really going to be a problem. It's more the subtle, offensive stuff that is going to be a little bit harder to track. I think one of the things you can do is put an intent filter in the front. So every time anyone asks for something from an LLM, you can have an LLM ask, is what they're asking appropriate? And if it's not appropriate, you can steer them away from that question. But if it is, you can have them go on. And so that's one way to deal with it. But yeah, I think if you can just rely on Anthropic or OpenAI. OpenAI is pretty good about it. It's not maybe perfect, but rely on them to have good responses. That's definitely going to be the easiest.
All right, any other?
Yeah, I got one. So you're talking about AI replacing people's jobs, potentially. Is that a reality yet? I mean, right, we've seen these launches where you ask it a prompt, you ask it a question, but have you actually seen that being done?
I've seen it being tried, and I've actually seen it being tried and failed. So it's, I think the thing is, there are some very low-skilled jobs, especially around support and customer service, that are people interacting with customers, and they're really, really expensive, and people want to stop paying for that. And so they've definitely tried to do that with AI, and it's just harder than it looks for a lot of reasons. Especially, if you're talking about support, people end up building a mental model of what they're talking about. And even if the AI has access to all the documentation and all the information, it still can't make the leaps that it needs to make to really make that happen. But, and when we're talking about just general customer service, it's really just, you have to watch out about those little subtle cultural issues, the social factors that maybe the AI doesn't know, and because companies can get in trouble there. A lot of times they don't care. They just need something cheaper. They don't need it to be good, and then you run into the issue of maybe making your customers angry because they don't want to talk to an AI.
I'd like to ask you about employee training. A lot of times these tedious jobs are jobs that people think is they're entry level and they're still learning the ropes. And in order to be creative, they kind of have to understand the domain first. So in a world where we're automating the tedious types of job, how are we going to train up people to be able to be creative and work with AI?
Yeah, I don't know if it takes that much creativity. I think it takes a little bit of practice. I mean, one of the nice things is the AIs actually provide a little bit of the creativity. You can ask the AI, what should I be doing with AI right now? And it will give you a decent answer. So I think it's really kind of more a matter of getting the experience with it, and building some comfort with it, and putting in a little effort to figure out how can you automate things, how to get used to it, and I don't think that every tedious job, I think one of the slides I showed was it's not just the low skill, low education jobs that we have to worry about now. And everyone is talking right now about how paralegals are going to go away. It's like these AIs, they know law back and forth. It's like that's mostly what a paralegal does, and so they're not going, there's no reason to have them around. So I heard that one day, and the very next day I was talking to a paralegal and found out that 95% of a paralegal's job is making copies. And that's something that ChatGPT is never going to do. So there's tedious things that you do in your job that maybe the AI can't replace, and there's other jobs that maybe is a little bit, people have to worry a little bit more, and those are actually maybe the higher skill jobs. So I think it's really right now, it's just to be ready for it. is just to understand how much of your job can the AI do right now. And if it's a lot, maybe you should think about another job. If it's not, then maybe you're safe for a while.
All right, let's do one more and then wrap up.
Okay, well, you mentioned a couple of times that people don't want to talk to AI. Do you think that will change over time as people start to use things like ChatGPT? Because that would change the landscape as well, then, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's going to change. It's going to become normalized, and people are going to get used to it. And I mean, yeah, you're right. Lots of people are using ChatGPT, and that, it behaves like an individual, and and people are not getting creeped out about that. So, but those are early adopters, and early adopters are generally just more open to everything. When you're talking about your support customers, they're the people that really are unlikely to be happy when they find they're talking to an AI. So I do think it's going to be fine in the end. But you can also look at like texting, and we've been able to do voice texting for a long time, and you go around and you see a lot of people doing that, and I'm just not one of them. Like, a lot of people are just not they still want to type it, and maybe because they don't want people to hear them or whatever. But and that's the kind of the future's unevenly distributed kind of thing. It's like maybe some people are going to be very used to it, and some people are just never going to get used to the idea of talking to an AI.